Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of the Vixen Voice. Today, I love doing this, but today is especially special because our guest is my best friend, Sara Heald. So, Sara, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Anyway, today Sara and I are going to talk about a number of things. So, Sara is a wife, mother of two, and the founder of Sara in the City, a corporate event planning business based out of Houston. So, the fun part, Sara, is I think at first you expected just to do events in Houston, and you've turned out to do events all over the country and even the world. Am I right?
Yes, it's been really exciting. I got to do events in London, Las Vegas, and that was just in the past 2 years. I have some events set up this in August in Corpus Christi, Austin, and San Antonio.
Wow, making the rounds. So I'm excited to chat with Sara today. She's also in our Vixen Mastermind, and we may chat about that a little bit. But of course, I know Sara's story intimately well. And the cool part about her business, in my opinion, is she started it in 2021. And I'm going to save her story for you, but it's had an astronomical rise in that period of time. And the way she ended up being a business owner is pretty unique too, because Sara, I don't think that was ever your plan. Am I right?
Right.
Awesome. So we're going to kind of dig in. Sara, if you wouldn't mind, just share with us a time in your life that was maybe a pivotal moment that created this, beautiful, amazing woman we see in front of us today.
Well, a very pivotal point in my life was when I had my firstborn, Ellie. And what was so significant about this event, other than bringing into the world a beautiful child, was that things did not go according to my plan. I pretty much always believed that if you did your research and you practiced and you set forth certain events, then you could control your circumstances. And in this case, I wanted to have a natural childbirth. So I took the classes, I read literally 18 books. I meditated every night with birthing music. I had a birthing ball, raspberry
Wow.
tea leaves, all kinds of things. And the day that my water broke, Ellie had other plans. And so that was a very good lesson to learn. One of my friends that was already a mom, when I expressed my disappointment to things not going the way I wanted, said, "Well, welcome to motherhood."
So you had to learn a new way of life, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I love that story so much. So, Sara, if we fast forward, you had your second child, Henry, right as we were going into the pandemic, right? So, tell us a little bit about Henry coming into this world.
So this would be February 2020. And I worked pretty late into my pregnancy because I wanted to take the time off once Henry had arrived, not while I was still pregnant. And so even into the end of February, I was helping with large conferences. Like I was doing an event for 500 people. It was a big deal. I was in the room with 500 people. And then all of a sudden, people started to hear rumblings of this thing called COVID. And Henry was born on February 26, 2020, and he was one of the last kids to be born in the hospital before they implemented a lot of strange protocols, and we felt really fortunate about that. So we brought Henry home, but his early time in home was a peaceful time and a loving time, but also a very lonely time because it was a scary time for so many people, and a lot of people couldn't come over. We didn't know what the risks were about having Henry around other people outside of the normal risks that are, recommended by doctors. But it was very scary, and I felt very alone because we were on lockdown for basically the first 3 months of his life. And I don't think he went into any sort of daycare or babysitter situation until he was 9 months old.
Wow. Yeah, I remember between that and circumstances, I didn't get to meet him for 6 months, so it was quite a while. And we sat in your backyard and had a nice picnic. It was beautiful. Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that because it's really important. So, we can all remember back to having our own struggles, our own fears during that time. And, imagine being a corporate event planner. At that time, Sara was employed by someone else, and having your second child right as we go into the pandemic. And obviously, the pandemic was not very friendly to your industry, right?
No, it absolutely took the entire event industry and shook it up, and everybody landed in different places. Many businesses closed, didn't reemerge. People changed their career paths and did different things. And the company that I had been employed by did not reopen after the pandemic was over.
Yeah. And so, you know, at that time, you found yourself a stay at home mom, which again was not a planned endeavor. So, share with us, how you adapted to that, what maybe skill sets and strengths you had to dig into at that moment, or anything else you'd like to share about that period.
That was a really humorous time, I suppose, because I had thought that with my second child that I would get to have this maternity leave where, since I'd already done it once, I could do all the cool things. Like I could be the cool mom with the stroller, and I could take little Henry to breweries and go on little tours, because when they're little, they sleep all the time. So if you're strategic about it, you can still live a really full life and go all these kinds of places with your newborn. But of course, we couldn't leave to go anywhere. And I really did feel for a long time, maybe 6 months into the process, through lockdown, through different protocols by different government entities, I really did feel a lot of anger, because that was certainly not what I had planned. And it wasn't the life that I had wanted. And it took about that summer, I started to come out of all that anger, and I started to embrace the fact that I was a stay-at-home mom. And I kind of thought, gosh darn it, if I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom, I'm going to be the best stay-at-home mom there is. So I really threw myself into it fully. It was a very immersive experience. I joined this lovely MOPS group through a local church. I had, a million different lists with all kinds of outings. I was making fun lunches and snacks at home, cutting out fun shapes. We were baking all the time. It was really fun. And I started to really enjoy being a stay-at-home mom, and kind of dove into that. My husband and I took a look at our finances. We decided that yes, I could stay home, but there were some things that we were going to have to go without, but we agreed to what those things were. And so we were all in that plan that I was going to be a stay-at-home mom.
And so, what changed? Because you now have this thriving business, within 3 years of the pandemic. So, what happened to change that course? I mean, I love that you started your story, by the way, how Ellie came into your world in a way that you did not plan, and you had to learn that things don't go as planned, because how fruitful was that for the next few years, right?
Yeah.
But share with us, the transition, because this is something I feel a lot of women struggle with, right? They want to be home, they want to be working, they want to be their own person, they want to be a good wife. And so a lot of women feel pulled in many directions. So, what was the catalyst, or kind of the moment you decided, okay, it's been fun being home, but I think I want to do something else?
What a good question. Summer turned into fall, and the activities and the pursuits of stay-at-home momhood and wifedom continued. And then my phone rang, and it was a colleague of mine that I'm now friends with, that hadn't worked with me pre-COVID, but somebody had recommended me. And her usual list of people that would have supported her in her event were no longer around to help her, because they had changed jobs due to COVID. And she asked if I would help with their event. And just even the opportunity or the suggestion to delve into my passions and get to flex my creativity muscles was enough for me to say, hang on a second, let me get right back to you. And so I had a conversation with my husband, and we discussed different childcare elements, and we discussed finances again. But ultimately it was decided that I wanted to go back to work. And it remains kind of a hard decision, because moms do always want to do different things, and they want to be all things to all people, and there's a lot of guilt. And so I see different moms working in different ways, but I've tried to carve out a path that works for me and my kids.
Yeah, and I love it. And the beautiful part to that is you keep exceeding your revenue goals and getting to have the fun mom time, right? So you're kind of getting to design that dream life. And even though it's challenging at times, it's such a beautiful thing.
And it's been really hard. Some of it is challenging, and some of the parts that are most challenging aren't even necessarily the client facing parts. It's more of my own time management and my mental management. So, for example, knowing when to stop work and concentrating on the family that's around me, trying to work on disconnecting from the work that I've committed to versus the family I've committed to, and carving out time for joy.
I love it. I love the carving out time for joy. So, share with us a little bit how you juggle these things, and let's go a little deeper into the difficult part, because one thing I've learned is when we hear stories of other women, it really helps us find peace in our lives or to make things okay. And so I really want to thank you for sharing your story. I know it's pretty personal, and I appreciate it. But, what have you done to help you make these difficult times a little less difficult, or at least to, conquer them or thrive in them?
So I have arranged childcare for Ellie and Henry, which can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But I think it's important, if you can, to have a plan in place to give space for your business away from your kids. And the way I kind of work it in my mind is that I always have the reservations, but if I choose to take them out, neither one of my children are officially school age. So if I choose to pull them out to do a fun activity with them, that's completely fine, and I have that choice to do so. So sometimes when my schedule allows, I do pull them out to do fun things and spend mommy and me time. Another thing that I have started to do is I've started to outsource as much as I possibly can in different capacities, which includes, meal delivery services, housekeeping services, and services at the school where they attend. There's a couple things that they offer as fundraisers for the school that cost a little bit extra if I were to do them myself. However, it's worth it to me to write a check to them to have them done correctly, and then it also benefits the school. That was a really fun thing to discover this year. Some other things that help me manage my time in my life are being very organized with a shared family calendar, and being very organized with a shared family grocery list. I have a delivery service for regular things. We won't say brand names because we're not sponsored, but I have a delivery service for supplies that are needed to live, and I just stay very organized in my job as well.
Awesome. So you mentioned there were some other activities that you outsourced to the school. Can you just give us some ideas? I'm sure not everyone has this opportunity, but one of my passions is to help women understand that they can't do it all. Let's get help, right? So maybe just sharing the types of things that you're able to outsource would be super beneficial.
Well, get ready to have your mind blown, because mine certainly was. But back to school shopping. So the school that the kids attend now puts together pre-populated school supply kits. And basically there's people that are volunteers. They go behind the scenes. They order all the stuff in bulk, so they pay less per item. And then they tack on a $25 to $50 window, which benefits the school. So essentially, but with the click of a button and the loss of $25 to $50 of income, I was able to let the PTO get all their school supplies ready, and they deliver them to the classroom.
Wow. So that's a great idea for other private schools to implement as well.
Well, I asked them, is there anything else you're willing to outsource? Like, I would pay for a lot of different things. I mean, not even school related. Like, what else can you do?
Especially in today's world, right? No, thanks for sharing that. I think it's so important. So, was it hard for you to start outsourcing things, or was that a challenge to let go, convince your husband, do any of these things? Or was it just kind of like okay, this has to get done?
It was a bit of a challenge. But once I was able to make that leap of faith and I've been into the process, it now makes sense. And of course, nothing's ever written in stone. So if I had taken these risks and outsourced these things and I had decided, wow, that's not really working for me, I can always cancel them or change them. But I figured it was worth a shot to put a process in place on autopilot so that I could concentrate on the things that needed to take priority in my life.
Yeah, I love it. So obviously, you have two very young children, you have a husband, you have a business that's growing every day. How do you find time for Sarah?
Well, that's kind of a recent development. One of the things that you teach in Vixen Gathering is always making time for joy. And something that I'd actually never heard before was creating a color on your calendar, not just for your stuff that you have to do that's awful, like doctor's appointments and personal appointments, but also for things that bring you joy, and using a different color to show that on your calendar so you can get excited about it. And when you see that on your calendar, or if there's weeks that are going by where you don't have that color present, then you have a problem. So I have tried to be less guilty about finding that space on the calendar and making sure it's showing up.
So I heard you say I've been trying to feel less guilty. So obviously it's a process, right? Can you share how that creeps up sometimes?
Well, I think like anything else, when you live in a family or you share a home with other people, there are other people that have priorities that might impact your own. And sometimes things change that might have a negative impact on my calendar appointment for whatever the activity is. Maybe it's drinks with a girlfriend. Maybe it's a special, maybe I want to get my nails done. Maybe it's time for me to watch a special Netflix show. I have tried to really prioritize that. So if things try to infringe upon that joy space, I really try to find workarounds, and I try not to give it up so easily. I try to make sure that if I do have to change or cancel those plans, it's very well worth it. And I've tried not to cancel the plans. And I'll also say something recently I have done with joy time for me during business hours, which is a rare thing. I have started to over communicate that to my stakeholders, clients, and colleagues. So if I have some joy time on my business calendar during the regular business day approaching, I let everyone know that it's coming, and I let them know it's coming again. And I make sure to assure them that it's not going to impact their program or their project, because I wouldn't do anything that would actually have a negative impact on the project, but that I am going to take this time and everybody's going to be better for it.
Okay, I love this. I want to dig deep into this because I think all of us can learn from it. So, can you give us an example of like, what's this email say? Like, how do you present it? How many times are you hitting them with it? Because I think this is a really great framework for women to learn.
Well, in this case, it is a frame email. However, I send all these emails individually to each person I'm sending them to, because I really am being thoughtful in the process about these stakeholders, and I don't want to impact them. But the first time, if possible, I'll give you a real life example. I'm taking a family vacation in July. And so starting in May, before school let out, I let some of my bigger fall projects know that, hey, for this time in July, I'm going to be out, and I want to give you plenty of notice so that we can alter our project plan to accommodate for this break. And I want to assure you that it's not going to impact the project. And everyone that I sent that email to had positive things to say about it. And I think they appreciated the heads up and knowing. Now that was back in May. So that was, 4 months prior, 3 months prior. And then I've reminded them once in June, and I will remind them again right before I go. And I will also make a plan to touch base with them when I get back. So for every one of my stakeholders, I'm going to be creating a next step so that when I return from my joy time, I can reconnect with them, find out what has happened in my absence, and, hit the ground running.
Awesome. So when you use the term stakeholder, what do you mean, Sarah?
Well, I mean client, because that's who pays my bills. But it could really be flexible for whoever is playing an important role in your life for joy. So even if you're not working, but you need to take time for yourself, a stakeholder could be a close relative or something. So in my case, I really mean clients, but it could be in other things.
So anyone impacted by you taking this time off is what you're saying. I like it. So, okay, that's amazing. I love the heads up. I love the proactiveness. And then I like that you constantly remind them because I think people take for granted, hey, I put you on notice. And we all know in this insane world we live in right now with crazy calendars, like people do
Hmm.
not remember what you told them even last week, right?
Right.
Much less 2 months ago. So I love that constant reminder. So, how do you take that same concept? Like the other day we were chatting and you're like, time for my joy appointment, I'm going to tennis lessons. So do you just like block that out on your calendar? Do you give them notice that you work so many hours? Like how does something smaller maybe like that work?
That's such a good and fun one. And I'll tell you how tennis lessons came about. Everyone knows that we strive to make sure kids as a whole get great summers, right? Whether
Yeah.
you're an aunt, a mom, a grandma, we all have these fantasies about childhood summers. And so we're all building these summers to include camps, activities, lots of fun. And I had built this amazing summer for both of my kids. And then I sat back and I realized, wait a second, there's nothing on here for me to go to summer camp. I want to go to summer camp.
I
And
like
I
it.
had realized that I had been for a while, maybe a couple years, been interested in learning about tennis. I'm an absolute beginner. I don't know anything about it and had never picked up a racket. So I decided to go ahead and reserve a weekly tennis lesson on my calendar. Now, in this case, it is easier to get around because the lesson is an hour. So I avoid booking appointments during that hour. If somebody wants to book an appointment during the hour, it's during the lunch hour. So I usually just tell them I have a lunch appointment. We move it. It hasn't been, I guess the lesson here is that it hasn't really been that challenging to defend a 1 hour weekly appointment. I haven't had any
Yeah, I love it.
issues. So be free, make your 1 hour weekly appointments.
So my 1 hour escape is I started going to the stretch lab, and they're now closing at 4 because I used to go in the evening or first thing in the morning. So I'll book that at like 11, 12, or 1 in the middle of the week and like go sneak out and get my stretch in. And I love it. It's amazing.
That's
Awesome.
cool. I've never been there, but I'd like to go.
Yeah, check it out. I was actually pretty impressed with the professionalism. So I'm sure each location is different. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing all that with us. I guess I'd like to ask, like, being a mom and being an entrepreneur, what are some big things you have learned, right? Because I mean, I think, is it fair? You started August 2021 with your business, right? So it's not even 2 full years. And I think it's fair to say that you exceeded what you expected in business last year.
Most definitely. Um, what I found most interesting was I had worked for other people in different capacities my whole life, and I definitely felt like there was a ceiling that I really wasn't able to break through, both on the financial compensation front, but also on the relationship front. One thing I didn't like about working for other people is that there was always these invisible guidelines to your relationships, how close you could get to clients, what you could talk about, how friendly you could be with them. I always kind of felt like, even though I was doing a good job and I was building alleged relationships with people, that my relationships weren't 100% authentic. And what being an entrepreneur has allowed me to find are pathways to form really authentic relationships with my clients, my colleagues, people that I hire to help me. And it's been really fulfilling and rewarding to not have any of these invisible barriers. As far as being a mom and an entrepreneur, I think one of the things that I always go back to is the why, as a touchstone, because sometimes it is very stressful and busy. And sometimes I find myself thinking, do I want to do this? And I think it's important to go back to think about, why are you started in the first place? And one of the things that really drives me is creating opportunities for my family. And so as long as I'm being successful in that, right, I feel like I'm doing a good job.
I love it. And I remember back to when you were starting this business, and I just was like, I'm so excited for you because you love being a mom. You want to go back to work. You don't really have to go back to work. I mean, not that you guys didn't want or need other things, but you really started in this beautiful place where you could pick and choose what you said yes to. And it was explosive growth in your first full year of business. So, do you think that ability to choose, which, by the way, everyone has that ability to choose, it's just our own self limiting beliefs that we feel we have to say yes to everything, right? But talk about that. Do you think that's part of why you were so like successful in your breakout year?
I think so. I think the freedom from my frame of mind that you talked about, like lack of limiting beliefs, really impacted my authenticity when I was helping people. Because the people that I helped in my full first 18 months became friends, colleagues. They gave me other referrals. We really liked each other. We became friends and we were doing good work together. So, I had some award-winning work product that happened during that year. And I think it was because everyone was ready to get back to work. I lacked those limiting beliefs, and I was truly happy to be doing what I was doing.
Yeah, no, I love it. And, you talk about the relationships you formed and how I really like how you pointed out being an entrepreneur took off the limits of relationships. Because to be honest, I've kind of always been an entrepreneur for a very long time. And so I haven't thought about it from that lens. And you're so right, because I love the relationships I formed with, vendors, strategic partners, clients, etc. It's been like so fulfilling to my life. And so I think that's a benefit of entrepreneurialism that most people don't think about, right? That you get to have these deeper, richer relationships with the people you work with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that. And I know you've become very close to some of your clients. And I mean, it's also really, suitable for your personality. Like you were mentioning the other day, I don't know why Ellie thinks that everybody in her class has to be your friend. And I was thinking, well, you're kind of like that. I mean, not that you're a people pleaser, but like you're a very good friend at like staying in touch, making effort, keeping relationships. Like you're very good at maintaining relationships. And I don't know if that's a skill you were born with, you cultivated, or it's just something important to you. But you've taken that skill set from your personal life. And I think that's why your business has been so successful. And this is, why we really encourage women, do what you're passionate about, do what suits you. And first and foremost, you have to know who you are, right? What's important to you.
That's right.
So, Sara, when you went into it, I hear Pepper in the background.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. She wants to be on video too. So, when you went into it to begin with, did you know that that was important to you to form those relationships and build them? Or was that a byproduct?
Well, actually, it was one of the things of importance that I thought about early on, because I guess it was my many years of working for other people. I did pause and I did think, what are some things that I would like to take note of and I would like to get out of this new business opportunity? Since as you pointed out, the immediate goal of me forming my own business was not necessarily a financial one. There are many reasons to form your own business and go back to work. I enjoy the benefits that brings. But when I was looking at why I wanted to go back to work, loneliness was one of the things that I was trying to cure. So I did think about that. And my first LinkedIn bio actually referenced that was one of the reasons that was driving me forward to plan events for people, because I enjoy creating beautiful memories for people. But even more so, I enjoy making deeper connections.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's so funny. As you know, I moved to Nashville in January, and now that my business is 100% online, before I'd go into the office a few days and work from home a few days, I'm finding it very challenging to be home every day. So one of my goals is to find a place to go work a couple of days of the week just to get out and about. So I think we're all still figuring out this new world we live in, and we have to figure out what makes us happy and whole. So that's a great great concept that you introduced. So Sara, if you were giving advice to a mother who had been in your position with two very young children, finding that maybe she feels lonely or she misses adult companionship, whatever it is driving her to go back into the world, what kind of advice would you give this mother about moving forward?
I think that I would tell her to take a minute and reflect on her last situation where she was employed outside of the household, and think about the things that were positive and negative, and then take those things and reflect about what kind of work environment that she would most like to be in, And really feel free to dream about this. This isn't a test and no one's going to tell you whether it's right or wrong. Nobody has to see it. But it's more so to try to create a frame of reference where you can go back and look after a little time has passed to make sure that your new work environment is what you wanted it to be. And I would also tell the new mom that's maybe going back to work not to be afraid to let other people help nurture their kids and do the typical types of things a mom does. There are many ways to be a mom for a child. And one of the cool things about my situation is that I feel that my children are still very well mothered by me a lot of the time, but by a nurturing daycare environment, by my husband, by a grandma. Sometimes we have babysitters. Sometimes I am able to put them in cool activities where they get to make new friends and establish new interests. And, you know, some of those things give me space to run a business and create and use my brain in different ways that I don't get to be when I'm a mom. So make sure that when you're building out your potential for going back to work, you're leaving space for you to do that work and you don't carry any guilt there.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. Awesome. So the other day you mentioned to me that, you joined the Vixen Mastermind, which is our group for female entrepreneurs, mainly solopreneurs scaling their business. And a lot of the women are mothers in there. So it's a balancing act. But you mentioned to me that a lot of the concepts, frameworks, skill sets that we've talked about, you've really put to use in managing your home and motherhood. So I would love to hear more about that.
Well, the joy on the calendar was a big thing
Yeah.
that I learned from you that we already discussed. What else were some things? Well, through the Vixen Gathering workshops, I identified that my 3 core values are achievement, community, and balance. And so I can use those core values to check different things that are happening in my household and in my marriage to see if they align with those goals. And if maybe there's something that happens in my personal life that feels out of line, I can spend a little time and kind of try to figure out why that is. And I can also make decisions and choose things that lead me to that are more in line with those beliefs, even as they apply to household things. So, why do I want to take a tennis lesson? Or what school should my kids attend? Or should my husband and I take a date night every so often? Or things like that. Or where should we go? And I can think about those everyday choices and see how they align. Or time management choices. Do I need to go to the grocery store or can I get it delivered? Well, achievement, community, balance. In this case, I'm going to get it delivered.
I love it. Awesome. No, thank you for sharing that. And so what difference did applying those core values make in your life? Like, did you react differently to situations? Did it just give you inner peace? Like, what was, you explained very well how you use them, but I guess what difference did it make in your life or for you personally?
So if you put forth the time and effort to really think about the core values when you're choosing them, then once you identify what they are, you can feel very much at peace, understanding that those 3 core values represent you. It's part of what makes you tick. So once you start using them in your everyday life, you experience inner peace. It's a time management saver because you don't have to spend as much time. There's less anxiety about decision making. Because, we humans can only make, I don't know the number, but so many decisions in a day. So if you can knock out some of the smaller decisions by reflecting on what your core values are, you can concentrate more on like the bigger problems that we all have.
I love that. And as human beings, we have a tendency, as my energy coach says, to should all over ourselves. Like, I should do this, I should do that. And our calendar is normally the number one, proponent of that. Oh, I should be here, I should do that. And that's why I like if you have your core values in place, if you have your boundaries in place, if you have your goals in place, then you can look at your calendar and see, hey, is my time and energy being spent on what's important to me, right? Instead of what I should be doing, because we can all fall into that trap. So, Sarah, I know you have another engagement coming up, so I'm going to wrap us up in a little bit, but you did have a free download to share with our audience. And by the way, all of Sarah's information is in the show notes below. So if you would like to chat with her about doing a wonderful event for you, or you just have questions, she'll be reachable below. And then Sarah, do you want to tell us about this freebie, the 8 Steps to a Wow event?
Sure. 8 Steps to a Wow event is available by visiting the website, www.sarainthecityevents.com, and it's right at the top of the page. So I would welcome you to download it.
Love it. Thank you so much. So as we wrap up, Sarah, at Vixen Gathering, it's really important to us to focus on our feminine superpowers, and really incorporating femininity, spirituality, joy into our lives. I think joy is so important. So if I asked you, what does femininity look like to you, for you, and what color would your feminine energy be?
Gosh, what it looks like to me and what I embody can sometimes be different.
That's
so
okay.
I think that but what it looks like to me is sort of a quiet yet powerful gracefulness that is calming.
I like it. And you give security through that calmness, right?
And I wanted to make sure that I know that you're not quiet because you're meek. You're quiet because you're strategic.
I like it. Thus a vixen. I like it. So what color would your femininity be?
I've always really been drawn to the ocean. And so I feel like the color of the ocean in Antigua, like that really crystal aqua ocean color.
Love it. Beautiful. Awesome. So, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you have a lot on your plate, and I'm glad you could fit us in. I hope this went on the joy portion of the calendar. So
It did.
Good. We'll chat about that later. So I always like to say that I think the world needs a lot more love, that if we go out and we're loving and accepting of love, the world becomes a better place. So if you had a message for our listeners today, what would you like to share with the women out there listening?
I think that there's a lot of different ways to create your own space in this world. But I would wish other women love and support and fearlessness as they try to carve out their own space.
Oh, I love that. Awesome. Well, Sarah, again, thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait till we can catch up again soon. I hope that you have a wonderful, amazing day, as with all of our listeners as well. Have a great one.
Thank you.